right, so this is the Roland U20 RS-PCM keyboard from 1988. So what is it? So the RS-PCM stands for resynthesis, pulse code modulation, and what that is pulse code modulation is just another way of saying a sample. And a sample is any sort of pre-recorded audio file that's then played back. So essentially, this is a rompler, is what people call them, which is a sampler that can't sample. It is pre-recorded samples played back through the keyboards. Right now, we're listening to Jupiter 8 strings. And it actually sounds really good. So what was important about the year 1988, as we enter the late 80s, we start to get into a period where suddenly memory, the cost of memory, RAM, basically, started to finally go down. So even in the D-50, which only came out a year earlier, the amount of sample space was much, much less. And now in 88, Roland was able to put out something that had a lot more sample space, longer samples, and they're pretty high quality. It sounds good. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Just got off of the DW8000. Well, I have my DW8000 here. Always keep it on hand. That way I can do a little accompaniment. Love the DW8000. Sounds really great. And it's a good example to hear the difference between something that has an analog filter and an unfair comparison. We're not going to get quite that analog juicy goodness. Also, I think this is just a little quieter, so we'll work with that. Big Grime, welcome to the stream. How's it going, my man? Definitely underrated. So when we posted about this earlier on Instagram, the comments that I got were all from people being like, same thing when on Facebook and like the Vintagesynth group and everything. People were like, oh my God, this is actually the secret weapon of the 80s. These are still being used today because unlike finicky analog synths that can sometimes take a long time to program, what's great about this instrument is it's a bunch of sounds in a box. And it was sort of designed for the gigging musician of the 80s who was like, okay, I don't want a goddamn Juno 106 where I have to change the, everything and program it. I just want something that does a lot of different sounds. So like, for instance, all of these analog synths in this room, they're amazing, but they can't do a decent piano sound. Whereas this can actually do So up until this moment in the 80s, that type of sound was not possible from a Roland instrument. And now all of a sudden, the U20 is able to do these incredible sounds that would go on to be reused actually in the Roland JV-1080 and a bunch of other synths from the 90s that sort of were more like the romplers, synthesizers like the M1. So definitely, okay, I got to catch up on chat a bit here. I would love to hear a deeper dive into the K3 sometime. I miss mine, plus want to hear what you've been able to unlock with it. Machina, I absolutely intend to, with most of these synths, actually do. I just want to cover most of them, which is a good moment to talk about that this month we're going to be covering 5 Roland synths and keyboards. So we're starting with the U20, then we're doing the analog, I think, better version of the Juno 106, the JX3P from Roland in 1983, I want to say. So that analog synth, then we're moving on to the D-50, which is the incredible birth of LA synthesis, the king digital synth of all time, the JD-800, and then to finish it off, the more controversial virtual analog JP-8000 synth, which came out in 1997. So we're sort of moving through the 80s into the 90s and seeing kind of like the best kind of hallmarks of Roland's output in that time. So it's going to be a really awesome month. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. Makes a huge difference. And that way you guys can see all of these cool synths and hear them and decide if it's the type of thing you would like to purchase. But what I do promise to do is with most of these synths, I want to go back and actually make my own patches. And the K3, one of my favorite synths of all time, that one we're definitely going to go back and actually make some homegrown Vulture Culture patches, and we'll give them away for free. It'll be a lot of fun. Let's see what else is going on. The velocity still works. Yes. In fact, it does. I've heard that these suffer from the same red glue problem as the JD-800, but mine has no issues whatsoever. It's actually a very good keybed. Let's see. So this is, let's see, not resonant. So Alex West is correct. It's not just not resonant, Alex. There's no filter at all. So a lot like the Wave Station and the Kawai K1, there's no filter. There's nothing like a filter on this. And RS-PCM stands for resynthesis pulse code modulation. So what they talked about with resynthesis was actually just applying ADSR to volume. So anyways, let's check out some more of these patches. This one's pretty cool. This one is kind of like a honky-tonk sort of sound, depending on... That's pretty close to the Westworld theme, right? Something like that. Got these wonderful... something around there, but we've got this just wonderful, really chorused 80s piano sound that was all over the place. Let's check out a couple more. E-piano, asterisk. And again, sort of the purpose of this instrument was to actually give gigging musicians the capacity to take this thing out and, hey, I need an electric piano sound, good to go. Preset 1-3, you know, it's that simple. And so I actually am quite a fan of romplers. I know among vintage synth snobs, they're sort of poo-pooed, but to me, what's great about these romplers is they have that sound of the 80s because they were used on so many records, you know? The thing is that synths like the Jupiter 8 and stuff like that get all of the credit, but when you actually go back and check these out, it turns out that a lot of our favorite songs were made with romplers, and they were just borrowing that sort of a thing. So good to know you're listening, Autumn. The keys are amazing on this Aquatic Borealis. They really feel wonderful. So here's Bright E-piano. Well, this one's kind of cool. And if I turn transpose off, I can go up an octave. It's kind of cool. Yeah, keys feel great. So the W30, Alex, give me some more info about that because I'd be interested in covering it. I've spent enough money on keyboards. I'll buy a couple more if it's worthwhile. So yeah, the piano is actually solid. So I wanted to do a little comparison here. Definitely a little bit of Black Celebration vibes here. First off, I need to intoxicate further. So if you haven't yet, here's a little cheers to everybody who hangs out every Wednesday night at 9. I appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing. Smash that motherfucking like button. Subscribe to the channel. Watch all synth videos, link in description. And so let's go back to the piano sound real quick. This is the Roland U20. I'm going to go over to my favorite rompler of all time, the Proteus Master Performance System, Proteus 1 plus Orchestral, which is effectively a Proteus 2. And we can compare. So this is 1988. Proteus came out in 1990, and you can hear the difference in the quality of the samples. So let me play this one more time. It's just this quick little nothing. Little riff over here, off camera. Back over here. So you can hear, hey, Pinto, how's it going, brother? Welcome to the stream. So you can hear the difference between 2 years, even, in the 80s. This is the best Roland could do at the time, the U20. Over there is the best that Emu could do with the Proteus in 1990. And so as the cost of RAM fell and they were able to store more random access memory, which meant longer, higher quality samples, you can hear that on this key bed, when you listen to it on its own, it sounds really good, but you can hear as we go down low that we're effectively taking one sample and stretching it slower and slower. So this low note doesn't have the impact that this note does. And that's like a common theme, right? When we covered the HD6000, that had very low quality oscillators in it. When you go low, it just falls apart. But on this one, it sounds really good. It doesn't sound quite what the Proteus does, but I also don't mind that, because sometimes it's better to have a little bit of a flavor to a sound. The Proteus sounds honest. It sounds like the most beautiful cinematic piano. And it would take 30 more years for Spectrasonics to come out with Keyscape to get a better piano sound, right? It sounded really good, but this doesn't sound bad. And in the context of a mix, there's certain times where, you know, could sound better. That has a fullness and a thickness to it. And you'll notice some of these samples aren't as thick, so they're almost like a little pre-mixed, right? And that gives you that little advantage over your enemies, you know, other music producers who have to start with a sample and kind of work with it, whatever. With this, you've kind of got like a sound that's ready to go into a mix, which is great. Let's see. I have a Roland FP30. Okay, so I don't know what that is. Just a piano. It has nice keys. What year did that come out, Aquatic Borealis? Experimented with the 1010s products on a rompler yet. I do not know what that means, James. So sorry. So let's check out some more sounds here. We've got a vibraphone. Daddy loves a good vibraphone. So you can hear. What's cool about this is it's probably got a little bit of, it was derived probably from some LA synthesis. That high little tine up there, right? That's probably a synthesis sound, but it could be created also with a real instrument, like a recording of a real instrument. Comparing this with like a DX7 marimba, this sounds much more authentic. Down here, the samples just fall apart. So, but if we don't play down there, really cool sorts of sounds. This one I heard earlier. I try not to like actually go through the keyboards too much before I do these streams, but sometimes you got to, just to make sure everything works. Really completely different bell sound than I've heard anywhere else. This almost reminds me of the famous GoldenEye sound, right? From the Proteus, but really spooky. Down here, it's just non-existent. Seems like there might be a little bit of fifth note hidden in there too. Really cool sound because it's different, you know? It's like something I definitely would use in a soundtrack because it's a sound that hasn't been done to death. I think anyways. Really spooky sort of almost Riven type sound to it. Nanobox Fireball on romplers. I also don't know what that is, James. I'm so sorry to admit my ignorance here. If it's not something that I have in this room, I probably don't know as much about it as I would like. So what was also really cool about this synth, and I haven't even really touched on this too much, but it was used by David Wise to do the Donkey Kong Country 2 soundtrack, which is, of course, one of my favorite pieces of music ever. So that's why I have this, an Alpha Juno, and a Wave Stations, because that's what David Wise was using in the early 90s to create those sounds. And then the other really cool thing about it is that it was used by Prodigy, which is the greatest electronic group of all time, behind maybe Depeche Mode or something like that. FP30 is more recent, around 2016, I think. It's supposed to imitate a proper piano, fully weighted, have escapement, and a very nice touch. Yeah. Nowadays, you know, one of the funny things about all of these synths is there's a few exceptions, but in general, these synth keybeds are all terrible. Even, you know, it's crazy to spend thousands of dollars on a synthesizer and the keybeds are just like not that good. And, you know, my cheap MIDI controller from Alesis, the keybed's as good as the best vintage synth that I have, you know, and it's like $200 or something like that. So we're moving on to a really cool patch, near and dear to my heart, which is Fantasia Bell. So what we're doing here is we're actually starting with sort of the bell sound from the Fantasia preset that Eric Persson created for the Roland D-50, which came out the year earlier. So let's check this out real quick. Now, of course, I've got a D-50, so a little preview for our stream in 2 weeks. Here's the actual D-50, so you can hear kind of the difference between that and the actual patch. So it's very hard to compare those two. Really, I think it's more like just half of that patch was used to create this Fantasia Bell. But it is cool to hear like kind of the comparison. Once again, you know, this is pretty small in comparison to the actual D-50. And that will be a bit of a theme when we're comparing romplers, especially early ones. I've got the Korg DSS-1 right over here. That's going to be another time that we're checking out these sort of like mid-80s romplers that just don't have quite the gusto that some of the synths that later came out. So moving right along, let's move into some drums. Yeah, and there is a little bit of echo on here. As always, I like just a small amount of echo from Valhalla vintage delay, or it's not vintage delay, just Valhalla delay. Pretty good. And again, this is like covering so many bases versus all of these other keyboards that usually do like one thing kind of good. These are really more of a specialty thing. Oh, this is really cool. So this is like a plucky guitar sound. So let's turn that off so I can get up an octave. Really love those types of sounds. Eddie, welcome to the stream. My favorite rompler is the Yamaha SY-TG55. So the Yamaha SY series. Did I just like knock that? Oh, okay, we're okay. I think we're okay. You guys let me know if we're okay. Really been resisting the urge to buy a Yamaha SY synth. They really are cool. They have that like digital. I really love the sound of like the Kawai K1 in the Korg Wave Station. I feel like the Yamaha SY is right in there. That PCM sound as they moved away from this. Oh, hey, heavy guitar. You know, a little of this. This is a pretty ripping guitar sound. Not so bad. Let's see here. We'll scroll through some of these organs. I'm not really an organ guy. That's kind of nice because it's a little bit more. That organ sound is almost so different that it doesn't quite even feel like an organ in some sense. Not bad. All right. Moving on to the third bank, we finally get into some strings. So this will be cool to sort of compare. And again, what's really cool, we have velocity, we have multi-samples, which means it's not just one sample like on the Ensoniq Mirage stretched across the whole keyboard, but we actually have different samples as we go higher. You can hear up high, they start getting kind of warbly. Better for playing single notes, not chords. And then as you go low, it's more stable. So we can get some of this action. I can play pretty quiet. Really, really awesome at the time. There was no orchestral electronic music, not like this. I think it sounds pretty good. I would give it, 2 thumbs up for 1988, but you do hear kind of like, pay attention to the high end. The graininess edginess is there. So these aren't full 16-bit samples, you know, they've got to be 12 at most. So you start getting that kind of wonderful 80s dirty, gritty coloration. So it's not just a pure sample like you're going to get much closer with the Proteus, which came out 2 years later, which I think is my favorite rompler, but this is still good. And now we can also sample things not like real instruments, but also synthetic ones. So, you know, comparing these over here. Jupiter 8 strings I started with. We've got a choir actually, so let's see if I go up here. Good example there of sometimes black keys, the velocities don't latch as well. Nowadays, people take high quality samples and try to make them sound vintage. Yes, there's a million products on the market right now, like Retro Color, that I love from, you know, that company, Excellent Audio. They make great stuff. But yeah, it is funny how people want to go back to these sounds. And by the way, these keyboards are super cheap on Reverb. They're usually in the $200 range. $200-300. You get the rack mount for $200-300 for sure. That's not bad, you know, like. And they do have a certain sound to them that's exciting. Hey, Tinder Hot XYZ shout outs. Cheers. They got the Enya vibes, and then all of a sudden the fucking love making apps came out. So cheers to you guys. Go ahead and ban them, somebody. Wouldn't be a vulture stream if porn apps didn't show up. I'm going to turn on the K1 over here. So, versus the K1 from around the same year. Comparison there, once again, you can make your sort of my favorite patch, which is just patch 1-1 on the K1. A little bit of a difference there. Definitely very new age, definitely very Enya. So Enya, of course, used the Roland D-50 on all of her most famous songs like Orinoco Flow. And so this is more of like an elven female soloist sort of synth vox sound. Synth choir. 2. Oh, this one kind of reminds me of that song you guys might have heard before. So that one, because it had like a little bit of that that little like pitch modulation on it that the I believe it was a synclavier that Kate Bush used to do Running Up That Hill, has that sort of sound. No rompler from the 80s would be complete without a slap bass. Real interesting little noise on there. I wonder what that is. It's only when you go down here. think it's in the sample itself, actually. Interesting. Flanging slap. Pretty cool. Kind of a little bit more, could be used for industrial. Now we got a nicer jazzy bass sound. Wow, that's bad. Wonder why that sounds so bad. Wonder if there's something wrong with that sample. All of these have like crazy noise. Up here it's fine, but why would you play a bass up here? Well, this noise went away. So it's kind of part of the fun of using vintage gear is it's like, oh, what's going wrong? Kate Bush fan, I didn't realize she was discovered by David Gilmour either. That's crazy. Yeah, that's not normal. But it seems to have gone away. Nope, still there. Wonder what that is. Could be a cable problem or something, but definitely a little bit of something in all of these guys. I don't have the problem on the synth bass though, so you can hear up here. Almost kind of like a reedy sort of saxophony sort of tone up here. I prefer it up here. Kind of nice sort of sound to it. Acoustic bass, synth bass 6. Really talky. 7. Interesting. You can hear, I talk about this a lot, how on these types of samples you can hear actually the where the multi-sample ends. So here, you've got a... Wow. Oh, I think it has to do with the volume. All right, I'm going to go just turn up the volume in my DAW real quick. Here we go. Adjusting settings. Live. Where is... Boom. That should do it. So, if I play this sample here, you can hear how it closes off pretty quick. Bow. Here it takes twice as long. Bow. And then 4 times as long. Sounds really cool down there, actually. All right, so hopefully that fixed our noise issues. Moving right along here to bank 5. We got a little soft trumpet action. We can apply some... Actually sounds really good. One thing I don't love about the Proteus is all of the brass instruments sound terrible. I should have learned how to play Vampires by the Midnight when I got to this section. Hey, my first live Scum night. Happy to be here. Well, we're happy to have you, 40 Thieves. I watched Efson Croft's video on the U20 today as well to prepare. That's awesome. Yeah, I'd be lying if I said that a lot of what I do in this studio isn't inspired by Espen. He's a really just incredible musician and person who actually was making music in the 80s. My fascination with it is much more coming from the perspective of somebody who was in the industrial scene in the 2000s, 2010s, and stuff like that. So for me, it's really exciting to get back and experience all these old synths. But he really lived through them, and so he knows these things inside and out. And this is a really cool piece of gear. Sounds really good. Trombone. Didn't you play the trombone, Vulture Mom? See, this is the sort of thin sample that I'm talking about with the Proteus. Has this sort of a sound that I don't care for as much. Brass section. There's that 80s cheese for sure. Saxophone. Sounds good. Who's your favorite industrial band? Well, I don't know if it really counts. EBM band, one of my favorites I was listening to today was Microchip League. So a lot of people don't know Microchip League from the 80s. They had like one hit in the industrial scene, New York, and that was really cool. I have it on vinyl, but I love all of their music. And who else do I like from that era? I mean, of course, Nights Arab, probably the most iconic of that type of thing. Some people say industrial, meaning bands more like, the first wave of bands, and that's not my thing as much. I sort of like more the 80s and groups like Sisters of Mercy and stuff like that. So that would be something like that. Yo, Sea Bastard. Is that, yeah. Welcome to the stream, yo. Can't hear the mic. What's up? Is the mic working? Is everybody else able to hear me? Is that okay? Wow. Oh, I love a good flute sample. That's really great. It was French horn. You can hear me? Good. Okay, good. Front 242. Awesome. They just played down here. So one of the groups that I am the mastering engineer for, Appui de la Nuit. I have trouble saying the name because it's French. They're from Paris. Last time Front 242 was in town, they were playing with them and they said, hey, do you want to play keys with us? And I forgot whatever reason I couldn't play. And I'm like been kicking myself because I was like, I could have played with Front 242. Now, when I say play with Front 242, opening band, small town. Yeah, I'm not trying to say it like that. I'm just saying it was like a cool opportunity and for some reason I couldn't do it. So that was a shame. Skinny Puppy is and always been my favorite EBM goth and industrial forever. Yeah, I mean, Skinny Puppy is definitely great. I've been kind of getting into Ministry again. So that era even, I'm a little bit like further back. But yes, I played Assimilate a million times when I was a goth DJ, for sure. JP8 Brass. I missed this one. Wait. Here we go. Maybe I didn't. The shakuhachi. Feels so good. You can hear the loop point up there. So when we compared like the Ensoniq Mirage, which is like a legendary sampler, the loop points on the samples were so terrible that it really killed a lot of the sounds. It's worth saying that until this moment, I didn't even hear a single loop point on any of these samples. So Only up there could you sort of hear it because a little bit of that sound is in there. Really like this sample. And Wikipedia noted that this instrument helped popularize this in music. You know, Anna and I have been watching Star Trek The Next Generation and now Star Trek Voyager, and it's amazing how many of these sounds they used in that show. Love it. So good. It's a lot of fun. Hey, we've got Fantasia. So now we can really do a one-to-one with how does this sound versus the D50. I didn't realize we had the Fantasia patch in here. So what we're listening to is, of course, the sample of the D50. So it's an audio recording effectively. Let's try against the real D50. It's amazing how much thinner this is. So what's interesting about that is it's not indicative of sample quality usually to lose low end. So low end is usually preserved pretty well, even if you decimate a signal down pretty harshly to get it to fit on a rompler RAM card. What's probably happening here is that when they recorded the D50, they scooped out some of the low end so they would be more mix ready. Because if you play this in a fucking mix, like this is huge. There is no room for a bass synth with that pad bell sound from the D50, whereas you still have some room for some bass. Like if I played a bass little thing up here, using the DW8000 for a sort of bass brassy patch, you're able to actually hear, yeah, in fact, the cutting out some of that low end really carves out a space in the mix for those lower elements that you're going to need actually in a real song. Versus one thing is when you listen to these synths on their own, the more bass they have, the better they'll sound, which is why analog synths sound so good on YouTube. But you have to remember that when you actually go to mix it, you're going to be scooping a lot of that low end out. So this is sort of like a more mix ready. Again, I think they were thinking about what it would be like if this was for like a touring musician or a gigging musician. They just need to get these sounds out. And instead of having 20 different synths like I have in this room, you can just get this one and be able to play gigs with it. And it's pretty close. It's not quite. Yeah, it's not there all the way, but it's surprisingly close. Well, that was interesting. You see how I kind of like did something else here? Calliope. Also from the D50. So I'm assuming this bank is all from the D50. Lots of new age vibes here. Really excited for this one. Soundtrack is, I think, one of the most beautiful patches ever created. So let's see what we get. Oh no, they butt fucked it. What the fuck? That is not soundtrack. It's something like soundtrack, but let me see if I can pull it up quickly over here. I might not be able to find it. Where is it? Oh, I think I have it. I don't know if I'll be able to pull it up quickly. Some of my buttons over here are sticky. Let's see if I can get in here. Oh, I don't know. It's in there. I know it's in there, but I can't find it. Yo, Tinder Hot XYZ. Cheers. Cheers, guys. Covenant. Love Covenant. I have a Covenant remix on this channel if you look up what would it be? It would be Dead Stars by Covenant. It's either the Dalliance remix or the Vulture Culture remix if you YouTube that. Irish Musico, greetings from Tenerife. Tenerife? How do you pronounce that? Northern Lights, amazing. Covenant's just incredible. Yes, and it does have 2 outs for mixing multiple instruments. So I haven't even touched on that because I'm not really a sequencer guy or a guy who does that. But you can program this thing to play itself sort of multi-timbrally in the way that you could with like a Korg M1 or something. So it can also be your accompaniment, which is why that drum patch is important, because you actually program drums with this thing and have that playing out of this, and even have multiple outs, like 40 Thieves is saying, where you could have, you know, the synth going to the mixing board on one channel so they can EQ that differently than they do, say, the drums or whatever else, you know, drums and bass you have going. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, they really did a terrible job. Now, having said that, Eric Persing made a lot of patches called Soundtrack, not just for the D50, but you have to think that that would be the one that they're going for. Tenerife. Tenerife, that's how you say it? Okay, I'm gonna do my best there. Oh, our Dutch cousins vacation there. Okay, cool. It sounds close. I wish I could find it quickly. I don't want to waste too much of your guys' time. Let me see if I can get in here. I don't know if I can find it quickly. I don't know, like I said. There is a shakuhachi sample in here. I gotta get these buttons fixed. Oh well. I'll find it later, and when we do the D50 stream, we'll pull this up, and we will do a comparison. That'll be fun. Tenerife. Okay, I'm going to try to remember that. Moving on to Atmosphere, another famous D50 patch. Whoa. Wow, we've got some really butchered... It's having some trouble. Wow, we're having some issues with this guy. Funny how it's now and not like other patches. And then some patches just work, right? This one's great. Really interesting sorts of sounds here. Endymion? Wow, it's funny. There's like a tom layered in there. We got another butchered one. Kind of want to sample it with a little of that noise in there. A little bit of Jupiter action. You can hear there's actually delay built into the sound, which is something I didn't mention. This has chorus and reverb and delay built into it. So that's another reason you'd want to get this. If most synths from this era from 86 back, let's say, didn't have any effects whatsoever. The first synth that really had effects was the D-50, and that was a lot more expensive than this, so you could get these sorts of sounds kind of pre-mixed. You don't have to have a separate rack, reverb, and chorus unit or something to get these sounds to sound pretty good. Little Mega Man soundtrack. I agree. Let's see. Let's keep moving on here. A little Celine action. I really like this patch. I could see using this in something because it's kind of fills that analog space, you know, analog patch space without eating up too much room, but it's also got a nice... It's got a fast action, but it's still soft, you know, so... Really cool sort of D-50 type sound. Star Trek vibes for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Is that a buff eagle in the photo? Actually, I'm gonna look at this. That does look like a buff eagle. So real quick, guys, if you've been checking out the stream so long, let's talk about a couple of things we can do. If you haven't yet, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it if you did. We do a stream every Wednesday at 9 Eastern, and it's a lot of fun. This month, we're going to be checking out 5 Roland synths from the 80s and 90s. So that's starting with this synth, the U20. So if you're watching this, then you go ahead and check out you know, the channel. That way, if you're subscribed, you'll know when I go live. Next week, we're going to be doing the Roland JX3P, which is the sister to the famous Juno 106, but in my opinion, it is much better and cheaper. You usually get them for less than half the cost of a Juno 106, and it has a Jupiter 8 filter in it, which is crazy to me, and 2 oscillators instead of 1. So why anybody would spend their money on a Juno 106 when the JX3P exists is beyond me, but people love Juno 106s. Now, I know why it's cheaper. It's because it doesn't have knobs. But anyways, we'll get into that because I have a retroactive PG 2K, so we'll be knobbing it up. Moving on, the week after, we'll be doing the Roland D-50. Really awesome LA synth from 1987, then the biggest, baddest synth in the room, the Roland JV-1080. The incredible digital synth, basically Roland trying to make the greatest LA synth they could. And then concluding, hopefully, if I get it back from Severed Machines in time, the Roland JP-8000, which is their first real virtual analog synth made to compete with the viruses and Nords of the 90s, and invented the supersaw oscillator. So that's going to be a lot of fun. It's a bald eagle with guns. OBX8 has 0 effects. That is correct. I bumped the camera again, but it looks okay. One thing that's also nice is this backlight is great all the way from 88. Yeah, so I mean, they're still making analog synths, $5,000 analog synths with no effects. So this is pretty cool that this thing was doing that at a time. The Matrix 6, one of the last Oberheim synths that we've done on this channel before, also no effects. So it's a good example of how you've got to be able to do that. Looking forward to the JD800. I am too. That is an intimidating synth. I got to do my research before that one because it is quite a intimidating synth, but also the most hands-on synthesizer. Roland said they wanted to go back to doing that. So, cover some things. Like the channel, subscribe to the channel. Best thing you can do to help me with that fucking algorithm, that motherfucker, is to just watch more of these videos. So there's a playlist. First thing in the description says watch all synth videos. If you hit that link when I'm not live and watch some of these streams and some of the stuff that I've done this week, I did a little synth jam, just recorded with my phone, with the wave station and the D-50. Oh yeah, I get porn bots all the time. They're attracted to me. They love They love my masculinity. Yes, I am getting somewhere. And another thing I wanted to talk about is that starting hopefully next week, we will have YouTube channel memberships. So what that is $5 a month, and you will get a few things. The coolest thing is you will get access to all of the Vulture Culture music I've released in over a decade for free. And that's including a lot of stuff that's not on Spotify. So that's going to be a really cool sort of perk. Right now, I've got a similar thing like that on my Bandcamp, but I'm going to be moving all the way over to YouTube because I think that's going to be kind of the future of where I'm going here. And so that's cool. You'll also get a badge by your name. So you'll get a little vulture skull. And depending on how long you've been a member, that vulture skull will change from like noob to bronze to silver to gold to platinum to demigod. So it's going to be a really cool way if it's something you guys want to do to help support the channel. That's a way you can do it starting next week, hopefully. And also we'll have custom emoji, so we can have all sorts of fun meme emoji that's specific to this channel. So that'll be a lot of fun, some things to talk about. Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to hit on before we keep hitting out some sounds? I think I've covered it all. I acquired a Matrix 6R through trade after watching your stream on the Matrix 6. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I think the Matrix series is highly underrated. Sort of the dream would be to get one of those stereoping controllers for it, because it does need a bit. I've got an OB Magic X, which is fine for sort of tweaking patches, but for actually designing patches, I'd really like to get something a little bit more juicy, but still really, really a cool synth. And just probably, I think this is true to say, probably the most gorgeous sounding analog synth that I have. It really does. It really, really does. Anyway, so it's starting to have problems here. Let's see here. Where was I? Celine. Sacred Tree. We're getting some real interesting gunk. I'm pretty sure that's something to do with the amplifier. Yeah, see, now it's on a good volume.
That is one seriously perverted bitch.
With the tips. What do we got here? Anonymous, thank you for that $6.66 donation. I really appreciate you. Whoever you are out there, thank you for being amazing. And thank you for everybody who donated last stream for the victims of Hurricane Ian. Forgot to say thank you at the beginning of this stream, but you guys are amazing. You guys raised over $500 for the people who were impacted by that. Over 100 people killed. It's a horrible tragedy here in Florida. And you guys are awesome for making that happen. So thank you very much. And thank you, whoever you are. I appreciate all of your support, guys. You guys are amazing. All right, I'm going to go turn the volume down in the DAW. Now it's kind of ripping. Real quick. Daddy will be right back. Yeah, here we go. Something like that. Really cool patch, actually. I really like this kind of area. Macho lead. Sort of synth brass thing. If that's your thing. Let's see. Sacred Tree, Macho lead, Lunar lead. Ooh, this one's good. Harmonic lead. I think these would be pretty cool to, you know, play some chords over. That's interesting. You can get like a little squeal if you slap that key. Up a fifth. Whoa, that is crazy. is something else. That's a really cool, interesting sort of a thing I was not expecting. Neat little sorts of crazy sounds. Oh, we've got the native dance patch, so this will be interesting to hear how this sounds. You're fucking kidding me. That is so fucking bad. Oh my god, this is too funny. Let me see if I can get this back here. So this was used, Anna, in that one episode in season 1 of Star Trek where like Next Gen, where Data goes like bad. You are kidding me. This is bizarre. I guess these are like reinterpretations of the digital native dance patch because it's not the same. Sort of like Soundtrack wasn't the same either. All right, so I'll give you a comparison over here on the D50, how it actually sounds. That's laughably terrible. That's like, I don't know how they thought anybody was going to buy this and be like, oh yeah, I'll just use that instead of digital native dance on the D50. That's incredibly bad. I love that. I don't know if I'm having a little bit of a volume issue or something. I don't know. Oh yeah, here we go. I'm going to turn down the volume just a little bit. It seems like it's working here. Very weird sort of patch. But I guess we've gotten on to the 8th bank, so this is where we're getting experimental. Velocity combination. Oh, wow. So I've got a piano sound. If I play quietly and if I play hard, I've got the voices, which is pretty cool. Spooky boy sounds, yeah, for sure. Does that synth have the usual carbon pads on the keypad? I do not know. Is there any way for me to be able to check that, actually, James? It's kind of interesting, because, like... Well... Volume's having some issues. What's interesting, though, is it almost seems like you can always adjust the volume slider and get out of trouble. So it's actually strings when you play all the way up. That's pretty insane. So if you really want to slap it... you can play choir, strings, and piano all in the same pad just by adjusting things. That's pretty insane. Eastern 915. extern. Uh-oh. That might not be a thing. All right, let's try rotorcraft. Ah, of course, this famous sound. Gotta have some aliens coming sounds. Emergency. Good old sci-fi sounds. Deep sea. Sound makes me very sad inside. Catastrophe. Well, this isn't going to be much better. Might want to spray some deoxit. Yeah, that's probably what I need to do. It's just an old keyboard. Probably hasn't been taken care of too well. I mean, it's in good shape cosmetically, which is always a good way to check. Yeah, it's got 3 faders over there. Probably something I can fix just by doing that. I'm thinking some background sounds for your next text adventure. Yes, for sure. They're definitely getting creative over here, for sure, with this. So yeah, all in all, I don't know. What do you guys think about this guy? I think she's a pretty cool investment. I need to clean the volume fader there, but otherwise she's pretty cool. And of course you can expand this with RAM cards and PCM cards, so that's cool. So you can save your own patches and stuff. You can modify things. I don't think most people ever did. And in my case, I don't ever intend to. Hey, arpeggiator. Let's see what happens if I do this. Hey, it's an arpeggiator. We've got chord 2. So I'm pretty sure you can edit these, but these are so that each note plays a different chord. Interesting. Go to chord 1 here. See what this one is. It's octaves. There's that that Westworld sound, which is octaved in the song, which is interesting. So you can get that sort of sound with these chord modes here, and of course you can transpose. So without the transpose, we're there. If I hit the transpose button, we can go down. Now, I think you can transpose too. I'd have to read the manual to figure out how to do it exactly. But let's say you're comfortable playing in a certain key. You guys have probably noticed that I play in C minor, E flat major quite a lot. And you have a song that's like one note off of that. So if I needed to play in C sharp minor, I could actually, I believe, tune the keyboard up or down just a step or 2 or 5 if you wanted to play a fifth up or whatever, so that you'd be playing in, say, E minor, but the notes coming out of the keyboard would be in G minor or something. Something helpful like that sometimes can be useful to get through a song. Yeah, we got some things going on in the chat here. Hey, Autumn, I love you very much. Have a great night, okay? Get the little bear to bed. Play Chariots of Fire. I actually don't know how to play it off the top of my head. Dubstation Zero. Welcome to the chat, by the way. Welcome to the stream. How's it going, my friend? Lots of usable sounds. I think there's something special about her. I agree. Lots of porn in the chat. That's a good thing. D harmonic minor is favorite key signature. I don't know if I can play some stuff in there. Let's see if I can. For what it's worth, D harmonic minor is a very Hans Zimmer chord progression. Uses D a lot. Alright, so I can play that, and then if I wanted to play, what would it be? So up there. That is a very beautiful key, 40 Thieves. I'm a fan. I need to remember to use this one a little bit more. That one slaps for sure. Let's see what's up. Nice, some of that. Live long and prosper, Dubstation. Only accept Blade Runner porn here. Fuck yeah. Joy as it is. Hopefully having a baby tonight. Oh my god, congratulations, Dubstation. That's amazing. Oh, that's so sweet. Oh, that's so cool. We have not had a baby born on Scum Night. That is correct. We have had an engagement. Shout outs to Ryan and Nikki, but we have not had a baby born yet. Yeah, cool key to fuck around with, so I'm a fan. Let's see. So I could give some thoughts on this. I mean, I think if you're looking to get a little bit of 80s flavor, one of the things that I've noticed about analog synths from the 80s is sometimes they can sound very good to the point where they don't sound that much different from VSTs, whereas something like this definitely has that grit and sort of the color of the 80s a little bit more. So especially if I was a producer hip hop, pop, anything like that, this would actually be a better recommendation a lot of times than an actual analog synth, because an actual analog is going to be a little bit more warm and full, and not really that conducive to fitting into a mix, whereas this actually really has a very nice sound to it, but with a little bit of grit, but not too much. Like comparing it with the Ensoniq Mirage, which you guys were here for, that thing, maximum grit, not always that usable, not always that good. I'd say about 25% of the time it sounded really good because whatever you fed it sounded good. And then the other 75% of the time, the loop point or something was messed up, and it's like, yeah, I'm not really going to use that nowadays. Whereas everything in here, pretty usable straight out of the gate. I think it's a good value as far as the synths in this room. It's up there with the Kawai K1 as being the cheapest synth in the room, or keyboard in the room, I should say. You know, what can't it do? Well, I think where it's samples of synths, that's where it starts to fall down a little bit. Let's see if I can find what was it? You know, so the Jupiter 8 strings. You know, that's definitely a thing. And then when we get over here into the samples of the D-50, I think that's where it sort of falls down a little bit, where, you know, then again, if I was a gigging musician in the 80s and I needed to, maybe I would have an analog synth, and instead of having a D-50 just for that one sound, it would be kind of nice to have this. And by the time this goes out through the PA system and everything, it's probably going to be about the same as the D-50. Easier on the mix engineer. It's definitely reminiscent of the D-50, sort of has that sound. But I think in the modern context, no, this thing doesn't sound as good as, you know, Aquatic Borealis was saying he was messing around with the Roland Cloud, right? So I would say the Roland Cloud version of the D-50 is going to be a better version of this sound and some of the other D-50 sounds that they sampled here in Bank 6. So from that point of view, maybe, you know, the Roland Cloud exists, so that wouldn't be the reason you would want to get this. This would be more for if you want sort of a piece of history that is, you know, interesting and playable. And, you know, the thing I love about romplers is they're just so accessible. You know, it's like, okay, that's cool. What about if I want to use this sound, you know? And all right, maybe not that. Let's get... You know, I just immediately we're going in a certain direction. Maybe I start playing that and I just go, you know, and we're immediately start catching a vibe and start thinking to yourself, okay, I could use that for something, you know? So, killing off... Killing off the Alpha Juno so they could make this thing is a crime. It can't even hoover. Yeah, so I do have an Alpha Juno. Alpha Juno, incredible synth, also very good value synth. I've done a video on this channel on it where I covered it. Not in any sort of depth because that's not my skill. My skill is more in... Well, you guys know I don't have any skill. I'm not good at playing keys. I'm not good at explaining synths. I don't know what we're doing here. But no, I love the Juno, Alpha Juno. But, you know, the Alpha Juno was a major kind of flop for... I mean, I don't know if they might have been able to sell a lot, but like as far as the reputation of the brand, the Juno, the Alpha Junos really hurt them because that came out at a time... Roland stayed analog too long is basically the long short of the story. In the 80s, you needed to start putting out digital synths, and they took a lot of years to do that. And the Alpha Juno just came out at a time where people didn't want analog anymore, and it didn't have quite the filter that the Juno 106 and the JX3P had. And people were just like, what's the point? I don't really want this. It had a lot of waveforms in it that were designed to emulate bells and electric pianos, better sounds that the DX7 did better anyways. So even though nowadays, looking back, we can see that the Alpha Juno is one of the greatest analog synths of all time, at the time it came out, it really wasn't such of a thing. The D-50, on the other hand, they sold boatloads of, and basically every major artist like Prince, Michael Jackson, everybody was using D-50s. And in fact, Michael Jackson famously went up to Eric Persing when he met him and was like, how did you do that? And Eric Persing didn't know how to respond. He was like, I just programmed the synth, sort of a thing. So, yeah. And also, Alex, the Hoover sound of the Alpha Juno was a throwaway. It wasn't intended to be a main patch that was to sell the synth. And it's a good example of how, like, happy accidents. So Eric Persing, when he was designing the JV-1080, they were getting a lot of requests for Hoover sounds. And he was like, okay, I got to figure out what this Hoover thing is. And because the JV-1080, which uses a lot of the same stuff that the U20 does, is a sample based, but it's basically sample plus synthesis, filters, and PCM like this is, but this doesn't have a filter, the 1080 does. And so he's like, okay, I got to come up with some Hoover sounds. And when he went and researched it, he was like, where did this sound come from? And he's like, I invented the Hoover sound because it was a throwaway patch. I want to say it was like on one of the last banks of the Juno. And he had done it sort of as a joke. Like, the patch name is called What the ? And it's just a weird sound he came up with and decided to throw in there. He wasn't expecting that would end up getting used by rave and techno artists in one of the most iconic sounds in all of electronic music. So, at the moment anyways, it's definitely one of those things where it's just, it's kind of a funny way that history plays out. That was a bit of a rant, but hopefully interesting to somebody somewhere. Your baby might develop a hankering for a JD800. Yeah, for sure. What are your thoughts on something like the System 8 or the Jupiter X? Let's see. Thank you very much, Aquatic. I appreciate it for the compliment. Yes, and Dub Zero, definitely keep us posted. Yes, he invented it, but he didn't realize he invented it. Thoughts on the Jupiter X? So the guy I bought this Oberheim from had a Jupiter X at his place. And of course, there's the Juno X, which is essentially the same sound engine, but in a Juno 106 package with a couple of extra things I think they snuck in there. What are my thoughts? So when I touched it and physically had my hands on it, you can't downplay how great the actual feeling of it is. It really does feel premium and awesome in a way that I'm not used to from vintage synths of the 80s, because a lot of vintage synths are actually kind of plasticky and tacky. These little knobs are not very great. But with these, it's got a certain feel to them, certain sound. Let's get off of that sound. That's a terrible one. This one sounds good up here. The volume's working for me now. Sounds cool. So as far as the feel of the keypad, everything was 100% premium, which is, I appreciate that they did that. Would I buy it? Probably not. I think it's a lot of money for something that has a lot of menu diving and sounds good, but I don't know. It's hard to say. System 8 is based off of their alternate technology. I think analog circuit behavior, ACB technology, which is actually more accurate to the original instruments. And so it's kind of funny that the System 8s are cheaper, but more accurate. But the difference is that System 8 and the boutiques have trouble with polyphony. So the System 8, of course, can only go up to 8 voices. I think the Jupiter X can do a lot more than that. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can do all sorts of stuff like this where you can layer drums. And I think it's got 4 layers versus the System 8 doesn't. Stuff like that. System 8, more plasticky. The green LEDs, love them or hate them. That's kind of up to you. Yeah, I think it's a hard thing for me. I wasn't interested in buying those synths because I've been sort of on a quest to figure out what it is. Is there any magic to vintage synthesizers, to analog synthesizers, to synths from the 70s and 80s, and why do we covet them? And in a way, this is all an experiment for me to sort of get my head around it because I was an in-the-box producer. I've been using soft synths for all of my records up until recently. So for me, getting outside the box is, it's fun and whatever, but it's been sort of me trying to understand where there are pros and cons, things that were done better back in the day, sounds that sound better, filters that sound different or better, things like that. And the System 8, to me, I'm not a good match for it because everything the System 8 can do, if I was being honest, I'd probably use it in hardware integration mode with Omnisphere and just use Omnisphere and just use it as a controller. And that seems like a bit of a shame unless I could get a really good deal on it. So I hope I answered your question there, Aquatic Borealis. Name the baby Roland's cute. Let's see here. I have a vintage synth studio baby, #1, ankle, already into it. So, anyways. I feel like that's kind of like a misty type sound. Like I said, I think this is where oh wait, where was Future Pad? Oh, was there like a second set? Oh my god, there's an entire second set here. I think. How did I get that? That one sounds really good. Future Pad. Oh man, this is one of my favorite ones actually. Wow, we almost missed that. That would have been a real shame. Yeah. A MIDI keyboard and Roland Cloud might be just as good. Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's the thing is if you've got the Roland Cloud, you've already got the sound of the Jupiter X. So like, it really makes it hard to be like, yeah, I'm going to spend, what are they, like $3,000, right? This is a $200-$300 synthesizer. For me, I would rather have maybe a really good way to do in the box stuff, like with a Arturia controller or something like that, and either Roland Cloud, the Arturia collection, Omnisphere, or something like that. And then if I was to, bust out of the box, I would recommend one of the either analog or hybrid synths. So best recommendation would be the Kawai K3, because you can get them usually for sub $700. I think I got this one for $400, Kawai K3. Hybrid synth, so you've got digital oscillators, but you've got the analog filter, so it's got that sound. DW8000 is not bad. I think I saw one in Guitar Center right now for $650, something like that. Their JX3P next week. Guys, the JX3P is one of the craziest synths ever because it's got a Jupiter 8 filter, like a real Jupiter 8 filter. You can usually get these guys for $1,000 or less. And, it's the Jupiter 8 in there, right? That's the important part of a synth. So, a lot of times people talk about the oscillators. A sawtooth usually is going to sound like a sawtooth. It doesn't matter if it's digital, if it's digitally controlled, if it's a voltage controlled oscillator. It's probably going to sound like a sawtooth. It's the filter that really determines the character of the synth. So I would say something like the JX3P having the Jupiter 8 filter in it. That's crazy that the synth is so underpriced compared to other synths in the category. Are there any new synths that you're a fan of? Yeah, sure. I mean, there's synths that I would say I think are really cool and that sound great from YouTube videos, but I'm not going to buy any of them. I'm really interested in the vintage stuff because to me, again, it's sort of answering a question maybe that I had producing records for 10 years with soft synths, where I was like, okay, is there any reason to not just use soft synths? And the answer is, in short, not really. I think the soft stuff works just as good nowadays, but there is something beautiful about using these ancient machines and the nostalgia and the romance to them. And a real good analog filter from the 80s is difficult to capture. I did a video on the channel recently on the SQ80 and the Arturia SQ80V, and they did a titanic job on the software version of the SQ80, but the last 10%, you really do hear a difference in the real analog filter, the way it breaks up and saturates and squelches, that they didn't quite get on the software. But, for intents and purposes, that's something that us synth heads who watch YouTube reviews and stuff will hear, but I don't know if anybody else in the real world hears it. So I don't know if that answered that question. The third wave by Groove Synthesis would probably be the coolest new synth, but of course, creation of an old synth. Immediacy and workflow. Yeah, so workflow is interesting because, using these vintage synths, a lot of times the workflow is kind of terrible, right? Like a lot of them have terrible workflow. I think the K3, that's another reason why I recommend that one, is the workflow is great on that. But comparing that with the JX3P, the DW8000, luckily, just off camera here, you can see that I've got the a bunch of retroactive controllers here that I use for this. Let me see if I got that. Let's get it kind of like right around there. That make it so that the workflow on those synths are better, but just in their normal state, yeah, they're a little tough. So, Memory Token, welcome to the stream. A shop in my town is trying to sell a U20 for 600 Canadian dollars plus tax. Probably not worth it. 600's steep. I don't think I would pay 600 for this today. Now, if you're in the future and you're watching this live stream, I just want to say that vintage synth prices are volatile and are going up. So it's difficult to, I'll see a video from 2 years ago where someone will be like, I would never pay $500 for a DW8000. And nowadays I'm like, good luck trying to find one for sub 500. So, that's a thing to think about. Sometimes these synths just go up in value. So, it's hard to say. And that's one other nice thing about a vintage synth versus a modern synth is like a modern car. If you buy a brand new car, the moment you drive it off the lot, now it's depreciated in value very substantially versus when you buy a vintage synthesizer, in theory at least, it'll hold its value. Some things can affect that. So yeah, $600 today. I think that if you can find a Proteus keyboard or something like that, I'd recommend that over this, just in terms of like, the Proteus is amazing, and this is great, but it's kind of a little narrower, doesn't sound quite as good. A little bit more 80s though, so if that's your thing. Yeah. So let's see. K3 for $450 on Craigslist right now. So if you're watching this video and you want to get one synth from the 80s, I would say the K3 would be my recommendation. K1 you can sometimes get cheaper, but that's the digital sound, right? That's this sound. Which is not analog and warm. It is an 80s sound, but it's not that wonderful K3 sound. I'm not going to mess around and play all of them right now. But yeah, 450 is great for that. Are the JX3P and JX8P the same filter? No. So what's interesting is I'm going to probably fuck this up, but the Juno 660 and the JX3P all have the Jupiter 8 filter. The 106, the most famous of them, actually has a different filter. It's not the the Jupiter 8 filter. They modified it. And for better or worse, I think it's cooler if it's the Jupiter 8 filter, right? The most expensive synth Roland ever made. The JX8P and the Alpha Juno and the JX10, I believe they might have changed the filter on, but those have a different filter that isn't fully resonant. Now, having said that, JX8P, also amazing synth, and was the soundtrack patch from that synth, I think, is the greatest analog pad synth of all time, also created by Eric Persing. It was used in Mulholland Drive, Twin Peaks, all over the place. It's just an incredible patch that Angelo Badalamenti used a lot in David Lynch stuff. So huge fan of the JX8P. I almost bought one, but I was just like, I really can't justify it, because when you listen to a JX3P and a JX8P back to back, they're very similar. JX8P is going to be a little brighter. JX3P is going to be a little warmer. So that's the difference. JX8P has velocity sensitivity. It's got a lot of features that are missing on the JX3P, but the JX3P in general is considered the more coveted, better synth. Having said that, nothing wrong with a good, JX8P. Really good. Canadian dollars are 25% less than American. So what would that do? That would take a buck. What would that be? 25 $1.50 off of that. So what's a $4.50 for U20? That's competitive. I mean, if you could talk them down to $3.50, I'd go for it. But these things, I would make sure that they work really great. This one's in good condition, but you guys heard the volume issues with it. Condition matters with something like that. I feel, it's on the borderline. I wouldn't say it's a great deal. I think I would check on Reverb and see what they're going for. You might be able to get a better deal on Reverb or eBay than what you have in your local area. That's just my guess there. Your Alpha Juno for $600. Now that's a great deal. 15% sales tax on top. That's pretty brutal. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, any possibility for Eternal SysX or MIDI knob programmers on the U20? I do not know the answer to that fully, but what I can tell you is sort of like a blanket statement about synths from this time is it's a little tough. With this one, let me look at this. Yeah, it's got the 3 MIDI ports. I would say the problem with doing MIDI control over this is there's no filter on this synth. So you're not going to be able to tweak the sound in real time that way. All you'll be able to control is like the ADSR and stuff like that, which might be useful. There might be certain things you'd want to do with that. But as far as like real-time performance, there's not a lot that you're going to get done from this synth. That's a very beautiful sound. Definitely a fan of that. So anyways, guys, finishing off this beer, just want to say thank you guys very much. Once again, next week, Roland JX3P, really excited for this, and I've got the retroactive PG2K programmer for it. Going to be a really cool and gorgeous sounding analog synth stream. Week after that, we're going to be hitting the D-50. Week after that, JD800 by Roland. Week after that, JP8000 by Roland. So it's going to be a lot of fun to hear how these Rolands changed over the years and what they did right, what they did wrong, when they cut costs and it was okay, when they cut costs and it wasn't okay, and things like that. So it's going to be really cool. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate everybody for hanging out tonight. We do this every Wednesday at 9, so please subscribe if you haven't yet. Smash that like button. And yeah, I'm going to see you guys next week. I hope you have a wonderful week. Don't let the fuckers get you down. Love and light, bitches.